Good morning friends, welcome to Gyan channel. Today we will discuss about visual communication. So let's begin the class. First off, we will discuss about visual communication, meaning, definition and philosophy. Visual communication is the transmission of information and ideas using symbols and imagery. It is one of three main types of communication along with verbal communication, that is speaking, and non-verbal communication, that is tone, body language, etc. Visual communication is believed to be the type that people rely on most, and it includes signs, graphic designs, films, typography, and countless other examples. Visual communication is communication through a visual aid and is described as the conveyance of ideas and information in forms that can be read or looked upon. Visual communication is part of whole, relies on vision, and is primarily presented or expressed with two-dimensional images. It includes signs, typography, drawing, graphic design, illustration, industrial design, advertising, animation, color, and electronic resources. It also explores the idea that a visual message accompanying text has a greater power to inform, educate, or persuade a person or audience. Now we discuss about philosophy behind the visual communication. Visual communication, the oldest form of communication. For example, in regions around the world, there are cave paintings from thousands of years ago, some dating back as far as 40,000 years. Cave paintings are a primitive form of communication that were drawn or etched into cave walls and ceilings. Though their exact purpose is not clear, these paintings include representations of, among other things, animals, landscapes, and sacred spaces, and act as a count of prehistoric documentation. As societies became more advanced, travel brought people that spoke different languages into contact with each other. In order to communicate, people developed pictograms around the 4th millennium BC as a way to communicate. Pictograms are images that represent physical objects and were used to share ideas or ask questions. For example, if I was in a foreign country and wanted to buy a tree, I could use the pictogram of a money sign and a tree to indicate my interest. This works because over time they develop certain characteristics that people associated with different objects. A tree, for instance, has a trunk, branches, and different kinds of leaves. This sign would be universally recognized because the characteristics and meaning of the symbol are at a basic level shared around the world. Now we discuss about needs and importance of visual communication. Visual communication contains image aspects. The interpretation of images is subjective, and to understand the depth of meaning or multiple meanings communicated in an image require analysis. Images can be analyzed through many perspectives. For example, these six major perspectives presented by Paul Markin Lester. First is personal perspective. When a viewer has an opinion about an image based on their personal thoughts, personal response depends on the viewer's thoughts and values individually. Next is historical perspective. An image's view can be arising from a history of the used media. Through time, short images have been changed because the use of different media. For example, the result of using the computer to edit images is quite different when comparing images that are made of edited by craft. Next is technical perspective. When the view of an image is influenced by the use of light, position, and the representation of the image, it forms the technical perspective. The right use of light, position, and representation of the image can improve the view of the image and make it look better than the reality. Next is ethical perspective. From this perspective, the maker of the image, the viewer, and the image itself must be responsible morally and ethically to the image. This perspective is also categorized in six categories: categorical imperative, utilitarianism, hedonism, golden mean, golden rule, and wheel of ignorance. Next is cultural perspective. Symbolization is an important definition for the perspective. Cultural perspective involves identity of symbols, use of words that are related with the image, or use of heroes in the image, etc., or the symbolization of the image. Last perspective is critical perspective. The view of images in the critical perspective is when the viewers criticize the images, but the critics have been made in interest of the society, although an individual makes the critics. This way, this perspective differs from the personal perspective. Now we discuss about various application areas of visual communication. First is objects. Use of objects as visual aid involves bringing the actual object to demonstrate on during the speech. For example, a speech about tying knots would be more effective by bringing in a rope. Now we discuss about pros and cons. The pros of actual object is often necessary. Use of actual objects is often necessary when demonstrating how to do something so that the audience can fully understand procedure. The cons are that some objects are too large or unavailable for a speaker to bring with them. Next is models. Models are representations of another object that serve to demonstrate that object when use of real object is ineffective for some reason. Examples include human skeletal system, solar system, or architecture. The pros are models can serve as substitutes that provide a better example for real thing to the audience when the object being spoken about is of awkward size or composure. The cons are that sometimes a model may take away from the reality of what is being spoken about. For example, the vast size of the solar system and the actual composure of a human body cannot be seen from a dummy. Next is graphs. Graphs are used to visualize relationships between different quantities. Various types are used as visual aids, including bar graphs, line graphs, pie graphs, and plots. The pros are that graphs help the audience to visualize statistics so that they make a greater impact than just listing them verbally would. The cons are that graphs can easily become cluttered during use in a speech by including too much detail, overwhelming the audience, and making the graph ineffective. Next, we discuss about maps. Maps show geographic areas that are the interest of the speech. They often are used as aids when speaking of differences between geographical areas or showing the location of something. The pros are when maps are simple and clear, they can be used to effectively make points about certain areas. For example, a map showing the building height of a new hospital could show its close location to key neighborhoods. Or a map could show the difference in distribution of AIDS victims in different countries. The cons are that inclusion of too much detail on a map can cause the audience to lose focus on the key point being made. Also, if the map is disproportional or unrealistic, it may prove ineffective for the point being made. Now let's discuss about tables. Tables are column-sized rooms that categorize words, symbols, and data. The pros are that good tables are easy to understand. They are good way to compare facts and to gain a better overall understanding of the topic being discussed. For example, table is a good choice to use when comparing the amount of rainfall in three countries each month. The cons of the tables are that they are not very interesting or pleasing to the eye. They can be overwhelming if too much information is in a small space or the information is not organized in a convenient way. Table is not a good choice to use if the person viewing it has to take a lot of time to be able to understand it. Tables can be visual distractions if it is hard to read because the font is too small or the writing is too close together. It can also be a visual distraction if the table is not drawn evenly. Next, we talk about photographs. The pros of photographs are the photographs are good tools to make the emphasize a point to explain a topic. For example, when explaining two shanty towns in a third world country, it would be beneficial to show a picture of one so that reader can have a better understanding of how those people live. A photograph is also good to use when the actual object cannot be viewed. For example, in a health class learning about cocaine, Teacher cannot bring the cocaine to show the class because that would be illegal. But the teacher could show a picture of cocaine to the class using local photos. Can also help emphasize how your topic is important in the audience's area. The cons of the photographs is that it is too small, just becomes a distraction. Enlarging photographs can be expensive if not using a PowerPoint or other viewing device. Let's discuss about drawings and diagrams. The pros of drawings and diagrams is that drawings and diagram can be used when photographs do not show exactly what the speaker wants to show or explain. It could also be used when a photograph is too detailed. For example, a drawing or diagram of the circulatory system throughout the body is a lot more effective than a picture of the cadaver showing the circulatory system. The cons is that if not drawn correctly, a drawing can look sloppy and be ineffective. This type of drawing will appear unprofessional also. Now we discuss about theoretical aspects of visual communication. Firstly, the models of communication. Harnessed model, verbal communication as fundamental focus on reviewing and transmitting meaning. Reeves and Keyes model developed a model of three kinds of nonverbal languages, that is pictorial, action and object. Then Nelson Goodman concluded that pictures represent reality in the same way that language does. The symbolic communication is an intentional communication using shared signal system transferred via symbols. It involves intentional and strategic manipulation of displays. Let's discuss about verbal versus non-visual communication. Firstly, verbal communication. Verbal communication is intrapersonal communication, private and restricted. Interpersonal communication, one-to-one communication. A small group conversation, more than two people are talking, and public conversation, large people conversation. Whereas if we discuss about visual communication, then identification with pictures, labs, symbols, informative, charts, sheets, diagrams help to provide info, instructional, work instructions, and planning. Let's discuss about types of visual communication. Chalkboard or whiteboard. Chalkboards and whiteboards are very useful visual aids, particularly when more advanced types of media are unavailable. They are cheap and also allow for much flexibility. Use of chalkboards or whiteboards is convenient, but they are not a perfect visual aid. Often using the medium as an aid can create confusion or boredom, particularly if the student who is not familiar with how to properly use visual aids attempts to draw on a board while they are speaking. They restrict time and attention from their actual speech. Next is poster board. Poster is a very simple and easy visual aid. Poster can display charts, graphs, pictures, and illustrations. The biggest drawback of using poster as a visual aid is that often a poster can appear unprofessional. Since a poster board paper is relatively flimsy, often the paper will tend to fall over. The best way to represent poster is to hang it up or tape it to a wall. Hands out and memos. Handout can also display charts, graphs, pictures, or illustrations. An important aspect of use of handout is that a person can keep a handout with them long after the presentation is over. This can help the person better remember what was discussed. Passing out handouts, however, can be extremely distracting. Once a handout is given out, it might potentially be difficult to bring back your audience's attention. The person who received the handout might be tempted to read what is on the paper, which will keep them from listening to what the speaker is saying. If using a handout, the speaker distributes the handout right before you reference it. Distributing handouts is acceptable in a lecture that is an hour or two, but in a short lecture of 5 or 10 minutes, handouts should not be used. Video excerpts. Video can be a great visual aid and attention grabber. However, a video is not a replacement for an actual speech. There are several potential drawbacks of playing a video during a speech or lecture. First, if the video is playing that includes audio, the speaker will not be able to talk. Also, if the video is very exciting and interesting, it can make what the speaker is saying appear boring and uninteresting. The key to showing a video during a presentation is to make sure to transition smoothly into the video and the only so very short clips. Projection equipment. There are several types of projectors. These include slide projectors, PowerPoint presentations, overhead projectors, and computer projectors. Slide projectors are the oldest form of projector and are no longer used. PowerPoint presentations are very popular and are used often. Overhead projectors are still used but are somewhat inconvenient to use. When using a computer projector, pictures and slides are easily taken rightly from a computer, either online or from a saved file, and are blown up and shown on a large screen. Though computer projectors are technologically advanced, they are not always completely reliable because technological breakdowns are not uncommon of the computers of today. Computer assisted slide presentations. PowerPoint presentations can be an extremely useful visual aid, especially for longer presentation. For 5 to 10-minute presentation, it is probably not worth the time or effort to put together the point. For longer presentations, however, PowerPoints can be a great way to keep the audience engaged to keep the speaker on track. A potential drawback of using a PowerPoint is that it usually takes a lot of time and energy to put together. There is also the possibility of a computer malfunction which can mess up the flow of presentation. Now we discuss about importance of visual communication. The importance of visual communication is that it saves time, it's clear, improves clarity of information, helps in achieving consistency, gives better retention of information, and it is simple, flexible, effective, and popular. Visual communication in digital age. Digital communication. It is process of devices communicating digitally. If we discuss about digitization, computer generated images, CGI in motion is an example of digitization. In 1963, Edward E. Jack at Bell Labs, NJ USA produced the first computer animated film to demonstrate his development. In 1976, computer graphics was incorporated in motion pictures, with every image or picture, moving or still, could be broken into simple graphic components and reused. Now we discuss about future of visual communication. Visual communication can have a huge influence on us because it allows us to interact with digital content and absorb images more forcefully than text. We as humans are built to respond better to images than text. Our minds absorb images quicker than text, which would be beneficial for businesses as information could then have the potential to travel at a quicker rate and improve the general communication of the company through efficiency and immediacy. Visual communication for businesses is looking to become more popular in the future because the benefits allow businesses to improve their ethos, engage with clients more efficiently, and save time. Furthermore, it can also improve the speed of decision making as you can share screens to take the client through the process of your ideas or talk with them face to face for reassurance. It could also encourage learning and development amongst colleagues as employers will be able to improve the way they keep their team's knowledge up to scratch. Now we discuss about elements of design. Design elements are the basic units of a painting, drawing, design, or other visual piece that include the statements of design, line, direction, shape, size, texture, value, and color in that order. These elements are the materials from which all designs are built. Colors play a large role in the elements of design, with the color wheel being used as a tool and color theory providing a body of practical guidance to color mixing and visual impacts of a specific color. Line is an element of art defined by a point moving in space. It is probably the most fundamental of the elements of design as it is usually the starting place for much of artistic creation. Lines can be vertical, horizontal, diagonal, or curved. They can be any width or texture and can be continuous, implies, or broken. Shape is defined two or more dimensional areas that stands out from the space next to the or around it due to a defined or implied boundary. Because of the differences of value, color, or texture, all objects are composed of shapes, and all other elements of design are shapes in some way. Texture. The way a surface feels or is perceived to feel, texture can be added to attract or repel interest to an element, depending on the pleasantness of the texture. Most textures have a natural touch but still seem to repeat a motif in some way. Regularly repeating a motif will result in a texture appearing as a pattern. Space. In design, space is concerned with the area deep within the moment of designated design. Design will take place on. The two-dimensional design space concerns creating the illusion of a third dimension or a flat surface. Overlap. It is the effect where objects appear to be on top of each other. This illusion makes the top element look closer to the observer. Shading adds gradation marks or make an object to a two-dimensional surface seem three-dimensional. Highlight, transitional light, core of the shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow give an object a three-dimensional look. Perspective. Linear perspective is the concept relating to how an object seems smaller the farther away it gets. Atmospheric perspective based on how air acts as a filter to change the appearance of distant objects. Form. Form may be described as any three-dimensional object. Form can be measured from top to bottom, side to side, and back to front. There are two types of form, that is geometric man-made form and natural organic form. Now we discuss about principles of design. Principles apply to the elements of design that bring them together into one design. How one applies these principles determines how successful a design may be. The design principles roughly lay out the fundamental theories that make the piece of visual artwork appealing. Unlike the elements of art, the principles of design include elements that are less easy to identify but are essential to creating a pleasing composition. Things like contrast, pattern, and space are principles. These principles relate to two-dimensional art form. The top seven design principles, however, are firstly unity, oblique harmony. It includes the artwork. Unity means that all the elements and components go together in same some way. The methods are perspective, similarity, continuation, repetition, rhythm, altering the basic theme. Similarity and contrast. Planning a consistent and similar design is an important aspect of a designer's work to make their focal point visible. Too much similarity is boring, but without similarity, important elements will not exist. And an image without contrast is uneventful, so the key is to find the balance between similarity and contrast. Similar environment. There are several ways to develop a similar environment. Build a unique internal organization structure, manipulate shapes of images, and text to correlate together. Express continuity from page to page in publications. Items to watch include headers, theme, borders, and spaces. Develop a style manual and adhere to it. Contrast. In design refers to how different things look and yet how they go together to create a cohesive scene. Contrast is all about making sure that the subject contrasts with the rest of the image to help bringing focus. Things that can be used to create contrast can be tone, color, size, space, position, form, direction, structure, size, texture, density, and gravity. Dominance oblique emphasis. Dominance is created by contrasting size, positioning, color, style, or shape. The focal point should dominate the design with scale and contrast without sacrificing the unity of the whole. In design, emphasis can be created several ways. For example, the scale of an object can be changed to give it greater emphasis. You can use contrasting colors or add elements like lines or shape. In photography, emphasis can be created by changing the camera angle or framing of the object. Another great tactic is to change the lighting on the subject or background, which can draw the subject out and increase emphasis. Pattern. Human eye is naturally programmed to notice patterns. Patterns occur everywhere in the natural world, and we are pretty good at detecting them even if we don't realize it. As artists, we can incorporate this mental trick into our artwork. Repetition. Repetition can refer to any element of art like color, lines, shapes, or forms. Think of designs you may have seen that use minimal color patterns. It's usually striking because the repetition of one element catches the eye. Repetition creates consistency in the composition, which brings in the entire frame together and make it more meaningful. Movement. Movement is the path of viewer's eye that takes through the artwork, often to focal areas. Such movement can be directed along lines, edges, shapes, and color within the artwork and more. Artists and photographers carefully control the movement of the eye around the work. There are all sorts of tricks to make it work. Space. Space is divided into positive and negative space. They are both essential components to understand and they are closely related to the effect and balance of an image. Positive space is that which is occupied by objects. Positive space is the space filled and it's where you put your important stuff. Balance. Balance of all the principles of design. Balance is the most obvious one to apply to photography. Balance refers to the visual weight or the impact of the elements of the composition. It is a state of equalized tension and equilibrium, which may not always be calm. Now we discuss about importance of monochrome. Color printing is great. It captures the eye, holds readers' attention, and directs them to the information you most want them to see. However, there is no replacing back of white printing. Monochrome printing is still the king of the printing hill. For that reason, monochrome FMPs or multifunction printers are often an affordable and widely beneficial addition to businesses. Here are some ways that monochrome printing devices can aid your business. Firstly, lightning speed. When you need something printed, you do not want to have to wait around for old inkjet printer. Monochrome laser printers will blast out your printing project quickly and efficiently. Lower costs. These are very low cost as compared to the color prints. Going green. Ironically, sometimes going green is black and white. Monochrome printing helps environment by using fewer consumables such as toner cartridges so that your consciousness more easier every time you hit the print button. High quality. Monochrome printing is not what it was 10 years ago. In fact, the advanced mode of in monochrome printing have resulted in some of the highest quality document printing to date. It's available for your business. Furthermore, these advances have actually made printing more affordable over time. Color is great, but monochrome printers often offer finishing options that add that special something of your project so you can be a versatile as ever. Geometric shapes and forms. There are various ways to categorize form and shape. Form and shape can be thought of as either two-dimensional or three-dimensional. Two-dimensional forms have width and height. It can also create the illusion of three-dimensional objects. Three-dimensional shapes have depth as well as width and height. Form and shape can also be described as either organic or geometric. Organic forms such as the snow-covered boulders typically are irregular in outline and often asymmetrical. Organic forms are most often thought of as naturally occurring. Geometric, geometric forms are those which correspond to named regular shapes as a squares, rectangles, circles, cubes, spheres, cones, and other regular forms. Some artists play with the reversal of positive and negative space to create complex illusions. The prints of MC Richard often feature interlocking images that play with our perception of what is foreground and what is background. Other artists take these illusions of positive and negative images to even greater lengths. Hiding images within images, perception of form and shape are conditioned by our ingrained instinct to impute meaning and order to visual data. When we look at an image and initially form an impression, there is a tendency to latch onto what conclusion about its meaning and then ignore other possible solutions. This may take this may make hard to see of other images. Training the eye to keep on looking beyond first impressions is a crucial step in development of true visual literacy. With this we come to the end of today's class. Thank you.